wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this meeting. And good morning and welcome to the 2022 NIFA Listens Stakeholder Listening Session. This stakeholder listening session informs the research, education, and extension priorities of NIFA and has the mission of investing in and advancing agricultural research, education, and extension to solve societal challenges. The purpose of this meeting is to capture comments from stakeholders external to NIFA. Before we begin hearing feedback from participants, we will begin with opening remarks from Acting NIFA Director, Dr. Dion Toombs.
Hello, and welcome to NIFA Listens, Investing in Science to Transform Lives. Your participation in today's session is a testament to our shared commitment to advancing agriculture, research, education, and extension to solve the challenges society is facing. Our goal for today's session is to gather responses to some vital questions as NIFA works to prioritize our funding portfolio. By the conclusion of our time together, you will have had the opportunity to share your thoughts on top priorities for research, education, and extension. We will discuss promising opportunities and solutions, challenges facing food and agriculture, and how we advance, support, and fill knowledge gaps.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. Maybe we should just proceed, Catherine.
Okay. All right, so the instructions for the day. My name is Catherine Bonnard, and I'll be your moderator for the next 60 minutes. So at the time of registration, participants were given the opportunity to reserve a 5-minute time slot to provide feedback. So we will call on participants in the order of their reservation at the time of their reservation. And if we're early or have available time before the next reservation, we will open the floor for other participants wishing to provide feedback during this session. There will also be additional open time at the end of the session to provide remarks. So we do ask you to please keep your camera off until you are speaking, just so the ASL interpreters will be highlighted as well as the speaker. When providing feedback, speakers must adhere to a 5-minute time limit, and to stay on schedule, you will be muted at the end of 5 minutes. You can view your remaining time by watching the countdown timer displayed on the screen, which I will share in a few minutes, and the timer will start after I introduce you. So at that time, you're invited to turn on your video and unmute. So please give your name and organization when you begin your remarks. And then participants can also provide written feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time, November 30th. So let me share my screen with the timer here. And our first scheduled speaker is Max Teplitsky. If Max, you go ahead and turn your camera on and unmute if you're available.
Somebody needs to start my video because I can't. All right. Thank you very much. I'm Max Teplitsky with the International Fresh Produce Association. IFPA applauds NIFA's continued investment into research, education, and extension efforts. Horticulture supports the livelihoods of 2.2 million throughout the country and generates over 120 billion in salaries and wages. American horticulture faces unique challenges that can only be addressed by a sustained federal investment into R&D and focusing on system solutions for addressing these problems. Specifically, labor and automation, an investment into R&D for robotics and automation technologies that will reduce labor needs in the most labor-intensive segments of the supply chain while maintaining the quality and safety of the product is paramount. Climate-smart agriculture and smart energy. We see a critical need to understand basic science behind crop-specific conservation practices that not only sequester atmospheric carbon, but provide other environmental benefits. Develop technologies that will lead to the intensification of production under the conditions that lend themselves to the intensification of practices, and in parallel, provide incentives for taking marginal lands out of crop production. Develop renewable and affordable energy solutions and evaluate research and outreach efforts that incentivize small businesses to develop microgrids for renewable energy. Research is critically needed to develop valuation metrics for carbon sequestration and greenhouse gas emissions in specialty crops. Conduct research to assess economic viability, profitability, and sustainability of regenerative agriculture, including a robust and realistic assessment of food safety aspects of regenerative production systems. We see a need to invest in biotech tools and resources, and key priorities for biotech research and adoptions include identification and release of genotypes and tools to manipulate them, to develop varieties that can be grown in new or changing environments, including indoors, and have superior taste, sensory, and nutritional properties. Understanding consumer perceptions and overcoming barriers to consumer acceptance. Sustainable packaging. Distribution and sale of fresh produce requires packing and packaging that is low cost, biodegradable, stackable, yet sturdy enough so that it can withstand temperatures and conditions under which fresh produce and floral are shipped and stored. There is also a critical need to develop home compostable, biodegradable films suitable for modified atmospheric packaging that fresh and fresh cut industry depend on. Technologies to reduce food waste and food loss. There is a critical need to develop tools and technologies that extend shelf life and quality of fresh fruits, vegetables, and florals. Such tools and technologies cannot rely on single-use packaging or have a significant requirement for energy and must include modern biotechnological approaches for reducing food loss and waste. Further, it is critical to understand the utility of these technologies in the system context of the complex supply chains. We refer everybody to the issue number 78 of Current Opinions in Biotechnology for a curated compendium of literature on the feasibility of using such technologies. Health benefits of consumption of fresh produce and floral. There is emerging research on the breadth of health benefits of consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. However, the data on specific nutritional benefits have been notoriously difficult to reproduce. It is therefore critical to understand the basis of this variability. We urge NIFA to invest into understanding multidimensional impacts of fresh flowers, fruits, and vegetables on human health, as well as barriers toward increased consumption. Integrated pest and pollinator management. It is critical to continue to invest into optimizing integrated pest and pollinator management. NIFA has invested significantly into various environmental surveys, and it is time to move beyond cataloging issues and toward identifying and validating proactive, systems-based solutions for IPPM. Water use, its safety and efficiency. Issues in water use efficiency are inseparable from the critical need to ensure microbiological safety of food. And we applaud NIFA's efforts to foster the culture of agricultural innovation and see continued support for SBI programs as critical. As NIFA fellowship programs and 4-H, we continue supporting their investment in programs such as 4-H, National Needs Fellowship programs, and Multicultural Scholars Program, and insist that the United States would benefit from an increased number of diverse individuals with expertise in specialty crop production. Finally, International Fresh Produce Association stands ready to provide the technical expertise and connectivity to the specialty crop industry that will support USDA, researchers, and students in promoting specialty crops for the ultimate benefits of the consumers and the economy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Max. All right, and now I think our next scheduled speaker is at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So we can For those people who have not registered, feel free to raise your emoji hand, and then we'll do a first come, first serve speaking next if you would like to do that. And otherwise, if there are no volunteers, we can take a short break as well. So we'll give everyone just a second to so we had a Sign Up Genius website that you could register for a specific time slot. And if you weren't able to register, we have plenty of time throughout the day that you can just speak on the spot by reserving a spot by raising your emoji hand, and then we can call on you if there's time. So feel free to do that now and we can squeeze you in. Okay, so Erin, you can go ahead and come on, camera and come off mute. Please introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Catherine. Good morning, my name is Erin Lazat. I'm the Integrated Pest Management Coordinator at Michigan State University, and I'm also an IPM educator focused on supporting emerging minor crops. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today. As we all know, agriculture is facing a plethora of complex issues that threaten farm viability. And with the ultimate goal of feeding the world, the stakes for system success couldn't be higher. Farm systems require extensive inputs, responsive practices, agile business models, and continuous knowledge growth. And supporting those needs requires inspired research, the creation and support of critical infrastructure, the adoption of socially acceptable and innovative tools, and the use of novel outreach strategies that are user-friendly and are accessible and affordable. Many of the greatest challenges facing farmers today relate to their efforts to control pests on the farm. Insects, diseases, weeds, and vertebrate pests continue to present a substantial threat to farm viability and food security. Pest management is made exponentially more challenging by the addition of invasive pests, shifting weather patterns due to climate change, increasing pest management costs, market pressures, and shrinking resources to support pest-related research and outreach. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the federal government launching large-scale IPM research, it is clear that IPM remains relevant and critical to protecting farms and the environment. While IPM enjoys many success stories and widespread adoption, there remains critical work. I am here to encourage NIFA to prioritize resourcing IPM research and outreach efforts. From my perspective, there are three major areas of opportunity: increased support for research, increased support for IPM outreach, and an additional focus on understanding the social facets of IPM, specifically related to grower implementation and consumer acceptance of IPM practices. I'd like to take just a few minutes here to talk through my reasoning for these priorities, starting with increased support for applied IPM research. The complexity and cost of developing IPM strategies, particularly non-chemical-based strategies, typically requires more funding than simple pesticide efficacy work. For example, robust breeding programs or biological control introductions require more supporting infrastructure and time than standard chemical efficacy trial work. While chemical control strategies remain a critical part of the IPM toolbox, as we aspire to create more nuanced tools and transformational changes in pest management, we must have the resources required to build the long-term, diverse scientific teams and infrastructure to support these efforts. Similarly, increased support for IPM outreach is required. Despite the many successes of IPM, a major area of growth remains improving grower access to the use of science-based recommendations and insights. Various groups, including USDA, have pointed out that many farms still receive their pest management information from pesticide vendors, where obvious conflicts of interest may exist. Developing grower trust and reliance on extension necessitates access, usability, and reliability. Major cuts to extension support and the uncertainty of soft dollar funding streams limit the ability of extension to recruit and retain talent to serve stakeholders. This is a particularly difficult issue in complex topic areas like IPM, where extension is arguably most needed to assist stakeholders in navigating a dynamic system. Lastly, my third suggestion is to create priorities around research focused on grower and consumer acceptance. I believe one of the final frontiers in IPM remains developing insight into the factors influencing grower decision-making as well as consumer acceptance. An internal survey at MSU of IPM-related faculty identified grower barriers to IPM, including farmer perception, feasibility, lack of incentives, chemical company influence, and regulatory or purchaser norms as major issues. I think it is critical that we more proactively address farmer and consumer acceptance of new IPM technologies that help move the needle on farm viability, food security, and environmental sustainability. As we enter into the next 50 years of integrated pest management in the United States, I envision a strong IPM system that includes applied research, innovative tools and practices, supportive infrastructure, social insights, and education. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to provide these comments.
Thank you so much, Erin. Okay, we have about 10 minutes until our next scheduled speaker. So if there are anyone who would like to go now, you can raise your emoji hand and I can call on you.
If there's no one raising their hand, Catherine, we can also try that video again.
Sure, if you're ready.
Hello, and welcome to NIFA Listens, Investing in Science to Transform Lives. Your participation in today's session is a testament to our shared commitment to advancing agriculture, research, education, and extension to solve the challenges society is facing. Our goal for today's session is to gather responses to some vital questions as NIFA works to prioritize our funding portfolio. By the conclusion of our time together, you will have had the opportunity to share your thoughts on top priorities for research, education, and extension. We will discuss promising opportunities and solutions, challenges facing food and agriculture, and how we advance, support, and fill knowledge gaps. Before we begin the listening portion of our session, I would like to share with you a bit about NIFA's origins. In 1887, the Hatch Act authorized strengthening the capacity of the land-grant university system to research agricultural problems faced by rural citizens. To support this mission, USDA established the earliest predecessor to NIFA, the Office of Experiment Stations. The Department of Agriculture Reorganization Act of 1994 merged the former Cooperative State Research Service and the former Extension Service into a single agency, the Cooperative State Research, Education, and Extension Service, or CSREES. The merger formed a single agency responsible for allocating funds and providing leadership of research, education, and extension. The 2008 Farm Bill created NIFA to take the place of the CSREES. While the agency's name has changed over the years, its mission has remained constant. NIFA continues to invest in and advance agriculture, research, education, and extension to solve problems and challenges facing our nation. Based on the countless bills that have been enacted into law since the first Morrill Act of 1862, NIFA has about 80 grant programs covering the spectrum of research, education, and extension. About 10 of those programs are capacity programs, which provide support for research and extension activities at the land-grant institutions through grants to the states based on statutory formulas. Eligibility is limited to the cooperating land-grant universities. There are even a few programs that NIFA administers that are not directly appropriated, such as the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program and Biotechnology Risk Assessment Research Grants Program. These programs are funded through a statute-specific percentage of research and development appropriations and biotechnology research appropriations. It is important to understand the background of NIFA and the agency's programs, because at the crux of this all are our stakeholders like you. The title of today's listening session, Investing in Science to Transform Lives. Transforming lives is exactly what we do every day. I have seen the impact of your work firsthand, whether it is developing scientific breakthroughs in the lab and in the field, or preparing tomorrow's agriculture workforce in the classroom, or helping people of all ages with innovative extension programs. You are improving the lives of people all over the nation. And we at NIFA are continuously impressed with your achievements. We want to ensure you, as we continue to develop our path forward, your input is a driving factor in the decisions we make. NIFA's investments in transformative science directly support the long-term prosperity and global preeminence of U.S. agriculture. We value your input and look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Okay, so the first scheduled speaker is Casey Downs-Moe. Casey's in the room yet. Yep. And okay, so we did want to note that unfortunately it won't be possible to share slides due to the timer being shared on the screen. And the email address to send all written comments will be posted in the chat shortly. It is nifalistens with an S at USDA.gov. So I will start sharing my screen for the timer. And Casey, if you'd like to get ready. The floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you so much. Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of the 163,000 4-H participants in the state of Indiana. I serve as the Assistant Director of Extension for 4-H Youth Development at Purdue University. And 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to speak on behalf of our professional association. And I shared that a top priority in food and agricultural research, extension, and education that NIFA should address is positive youth development. It appears that NIFA has listened. I'm so excited about some of the changes that have happened in the last few years. Positive youth development is an intentional pro-social approach that engages youth within their communities, schools, organizations, peer groups, and families in a manner that is productive and constructive. Too often, youth are used simply as a teaching tool of food and agricultural programs. Youth can and should have a seat at the table to not only be a receiver of the extension and education programs, but also to contribute to the research and policy in food and agricultural systems. As I said, it appears that NIFA has listened. I'm so appreciative of the opportunities that NIFA has expanded in positive youth development across the last few years. One such example is the Youth Innovators Empowering Agriculture Across America grant that recently closed in August. And I know many of my peers across the country were excited to see that opportunity and hope to see future opportunities such as this from NIFA. Promising opportunities to advance food and agricultural priorities exist that involve youth as fully engaged collaborators and members. First, we need to know more about youth development. How and why do they contribute to their communities? We need to solicit input from youth to bridge the rural and urban divide in understanding our food and agricultural systems. We need to understand why some youth choose not to participate in our youth development programming. And we need to utilize youth as full contributors to solutions to our most complex food and agricultural challenges. An opportunity for further exploration is the challenge of our food and agricultural systems within a growing urban populace. Social science informs these challenges. Positive youth development is where to start, with youth as receivers and contributors. We are continuing along this path and embedding opportunities to answer these questions, and this continues to be a need among NIFA funding. The changes in the past 4 years highlight that NIFA is not only listening, but also responding to these requested offerings. It's important for our land-grant universities to appropriately respond and include positive youth development researchers and practitioners in these responses to NIFA funding, particularly using program models developed by social science and youth development researchers, such as the emerging 4-H thriving model. Two next steps that I would see for NIFA to strengthen our ability as our land grant and higher education institutions across the country is to ensuring that positive youth development researchers and practitioners are included on review panels and continuing outreach and engagement with other youth-serving components of the federal government. One example that NIFA already does in this space is the partnership with the Department of Defense, but also continuing explorations and work with the other youth-serving organizations across our federal government. So again, on behalf of the 160,000 4-H youth development participants in the state of Indiana, and I know that NIFA is listening and responding to some of these challenges. And my hope is that the work of 4-H positive youth development and the service to 6 million young people, our land grant universities are willing to stand up and continue to support NIFA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Casey, for your comments. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and repeat for those people who are just joining the instructions for the day. At the time of registration, participants were given the opportunity to reserve a 5-minute time slot to provide feedback. So we will call on participants in order of their reservation at their time of reservation. If we are early or have available time before the next reservation, we will open the floor for other participants wishing to provide feedback during this session. There will also be additional open time at the end of the session to provide remarks. So please keep your camera off unless you are speaking. When providing feedback, speakers must adhere to a 5-minute time limit. And to stay on schedule, you will be muted at the end of 5 minutes. You can view your remaining time by watching the countdown timer that's displayed on the screen currently. The timer will start after I introduce you, and please at that time, you're invited to turn on your video and unmute. And please state your name and organization when you begin your remarks. And don't forget that participants can also provide written feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time, November 30th. So I will check. The next speaker is Alex Soroka. Let's see if Alex is in the room. Not yet, but we still have 1 minute. So take a quick 1-minute break and see if Alex is ready. All right, it is now 9:05 Eastern Time. Let's see. Soroka. Do we have any other participants who would like to go? You can raise your emoji hand to indicate that you're here and ready to speak. Okay, I'll go ahead and read through a couple of these frequently asked questions, perhaps. We can get everyone on the same page. So one question many people have asked, are there specific topics that I can address in my feedback? And the answer is yes. What are your top priorities for research, extension, or education for NIFA? What are the most promising opportunities, solutions for advancement of these food and agricultural priorities? Other questions are, what are the greatest challenges that you see facing food and agriculture in the coming decades? And what fundamental knowledge gaps exist that limit the ability of research, extension, and education to respond to these challenges? Based on those challenges, what general areas of food and agriculture research should be advanced and supported to fill the knowledge gaps? And what is your top priority for research, extension, and/or education for NIFA investment? How accessible do you find information about NIFA programs and activities to be? What can NIFA do to make information and resources more accessible? What is NIFA doing right? And are there opportunities to improve? Another common question is, how do you define agriculture? And for the purpose of this event, agriculture is defined broadly and includes research, extension, and education in food, fiber, forestry, range, nutritional and social sciences, including food safety and positive youth development. And can I email in my feedback without speaking? Of course you can. Participants can give feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time, November 30th. Please include your name, organization, contact information, and please put it in plain language text in the body of the email. Sure, I can definitely post those questions. That. So those are the questions, and then the email address. I'll get that back in the chat just for the new people who've come. Oh, thank you. Got a lot of good chatters, good response. Let's see. All right, let's see. Is there any, let's see, got a chat. It appears that Gordon Merrick is on. I know your time slot isn't until 9:20, but if you're available to speak, we could take you early if you would like to. Are you ready, Gordon?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay.
Thank you and appreciate the opportunity. I'm Gordon Merrick, the Policy and Programs Manager with the Organic Farming Research Foundation. And just want to again say thanks for this opportunity to both raise awareness of the important work NIFA has already done, but will continue to do in the future. And want to touch on 3 main points today. First, that organic agriculture is a climate smart agriculture management system as Secretary Vilsack acknowledged when announcing the USDA's new Organic Transition Initiative. And then second point is investing into organic agriculture research is necessary to meet that the goals USDA set out in the Organic Transition Initiative. And then the third is there is an opportunity to meet that need, but to do so, organic agriculture research can't be siloed only to the organic specific programs at NIFA and across the USDA. So to revisit that first point, organic, we now know with scientific certainty that thanks to publicly funded basic research through NIFA and other USDA programs, that organic management leads to a more resilient landscape in the face of our ongoing climate crisis, from water retention rates to ability to rebound and utilize in IPM techniques. But what is really needed now is a concerted investment into action-oriented, readily adoptable research projects that meet the presented and persistent challenges organic producers are facing, as OFRF has identified in our National Organic Research Agenda that came out earlier this year. Investing into that organic agricultural research is really necessary to go alongside this historic $300 million investment that USDA is making into supporting organic and transitioning to organic producers. But we're still seeing a lot of persistent and new emerging problems and challenges for these producers. And some of these highest priority topics and highest impact topics are studying regionally appropriate cultivar development, as we've seen with grants through OREI, the Organic Research and Extension Initiative, as well as specialty crop research, and also plant and insects and soil disease pest management techniques, as well as nutrient management systems and nutrient cycling to try and keep things in the manure shed or nutrient shed. And then that last point where there is a real opportunity to meet the need for organic producers, and especially as we see the organic market share continue to grow. And now it's well over 6% of the total retail sales for food. We really expect that to continue to grow. Researching organic management techniques doesn't just help organic producers though, and it results in economical and ecologically sound management systems for all producers, including conventional operators that don't necessarily want to seek certification, but see a economical and smart practice to be utilized. I do want to stress that the importance of these organic specific programs like OREI and the Organic Transitions Program cannot be overstated. They've resulted in really high value research that's applicable to all producers, but there's still a significant gap between the current research funding levels and the amount spent on organic production as referenced by the market share point. And alongside continued growth of OREI and ORG, those organic specific programs, OFRF is really excited and hopeful to see more organic agricultural research be incentivized across all of the competitive grant programs, including the AFRI and SCRI. Just also want to say thank you so much for the development of Gateway as a tool to access these research things. It is a significant step forward into accessibility, and excited to see that continue. I appreciate the time for these comments.
Thank you so much, Gordon. All right, our next speaker is Jennifer Filipiak. Is Jennifer here? All right, seeing that Jennifer isn't here, we should wait just a little.
Hi, Catherine. Shelley McGuire is here, I believe.
And I slotted her into Gordon's spot, so we have it worked out. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
But we may have another spot to fill here. Jennifer. All right, so it looks like we'll go with Erin right now. If you would like to come on video and.
Great, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Good morning, members of the USDA NIFA team. On behalf of the more than 7,000 members of the Entomological Society of America, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to enjoy this important listening session. My name is Erin Cadwallader. I am ESA's Director of Strategic Initiatives. We're grateful for this opportunity to provide testimony on the priorities of the Society and the rest of the research community. Entomology is an incredibly broad and diverse discipline, and our membership represents that breadth. Members hail from across the US and around the world and include professors, students, corporate and government employees, crop advisors, pest management professionals, and even amateur hobbyist beekeepers. In the interest of time, I could not begin to do justice to all of the ways that entomology and insects intersect with the important work of the USDA NIFA, but I'd like to highlight a few and also leave you with an open invitation to continue this conversation at a later time. We prioritize issues of importance to the Society in what we call our tiered agenda. And our top issues are those that I'll highlight here today. Starting with the likely greatest challenge we face as a global community that's been in the news quite a bit the past several years is insect biodiversity loss and the important ways in which insects underpin all life on Earth. Insects are integral to the function of Earth's ecosystems, accounting for more than a quarter of all animal species. They provide critical roles in food chains and sustainable agriculture. Insects pollinate more than 90% of flowering plant species, including many human food crops, a global service valued at more than $500 billion annually. Insects contribute to regulation of animal and plant populations through herbivory, predation, and parasitism, including biological control of pests. They are essential to the decomposition of carrion, dung, plant litter, and wood, and thus soil formation. There is an urgent need for more longitudinal data, both here in the US and around the world, to look at insect populations over time and research the ways into which people may be creating additional challenges for the insect world through habitat disruption, overuse of insect management products, and of course, the ways in which we are affecting the world's climate. Relatedly, the Society remains very concerned about the continued threat of invasive species. Our forests, crops, homes, and livelihoods are threatened by pests that enter our nation on cargo from other nations. Furthermore, climate change stands to pose an additional challenge to the movement of pests within the US into new ranges. As ESA, we have called for increased international collaboration, improving the capacity for early detection and rapid response, innovative approaches at and prior to border inspections, ways we can engage citizen scientists in seeking solutions, and a sustained and consistent stream of funding for these initiatives. The Society has long been supportive of integrated pest management as an approach to mitigating the damage caused by some insects. We appreciate that NIFA is a strong proponent of IPM as a methodology to address pest issues. We would seek ways to expand its use, as well as area-wide IPM, throughout the agricultural community, both here in the US and abroad. Other top issues for ESA that intersect with the work of NIFA include protecting pollinators, supporting insects as a nutritious and sustainable source of food and feed, working to ensure that scientists are adequately trained in scientific communication, developing the capacity of the future of the biological workforce, proper training and education for that workforce through credentialing programs such as the Board Certified Entomologist Credential. And of course, we support evidence-based decision-making in all federal agencies. In closing, I'd like to thank you again for this opportunity to come to you today, and we'll look forward to the many ways we will be able to work together in future years. If there is any way in which ESA can serve as a resource for NIFA, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Erin. Okay. So now, Shelley, would you please turn on your camera and you can unmute.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this stakeholder listening session to inform the research, extension, and education priorities of the National Institute for Food and Agriculture. My name is Shelley McGuire, and I'm the Policy and Research Director at Maine Farmland Trust. Maine Farmland Trust is committed to protecting Maine farmland, supporting farmers throughout the state, and advancing the future of farming. I want to focus my contribution today on the issue of per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS substances, and their contamination in farm soils, water systems, and crops, and the need for NEFA to prioritize PFAS-related research. As many of you may be aware, PFAS are man-made chemicals that are stable and persistent in the environment, bioaccumulative, toxic at low concentrations, and easily transferred. PFAS accumulate in humans and animals, and although more research is needed on health impacts, studies suggest that PFAS exposure can lead to increased cholesterol levels, changes in liver enzymes, decreased vaccine response in children, low birth weights, thyroid disease, and increased risk of particular types of cancer, as well as preeclampsia, or increased risk of high blood pressure in pregnant women. PFAS have been widely used in household products and in industrial settings as early as the 1950s. Because of their broad usage, they can end up in groundwater, drinking water, and soils, where they can enter the food chain. Concerningly, PFAS chemicals can end up in wastewater treatment plants as sludge, and these sludge residuals have been permitted in many states to be spread on farm soils as a fertilizer. Until recently, the presence of PFAS in sludge was unknown, but sludge continues to be spread on farmland in states across the country. Maine is one of the few states in the country that has established screening levels to assess the level of PFAS contamination for products such as meat and milk. As mandatory and voluntary testing has become more widespread in Maine, farmers and residents across the state have discovered that their water, soil, and some of the food that they produce are contaminated to various degrees. Maine Farmland Trust has been working for months with a broad range of partners and local stakeholders to channel urgent funding and resources to impacted farmers, but more must be done. Other states are beginning to recognize the reality that Maine already has, that PFAS contamination endangers farm families, the agriculture sector, and our food system. It's imperative that we enact a strong federal safety net of support, and research is a critical component of that support. Prioritizing PFAS-related research is needed. For example, research on soil remediation methods, including phytoremediation, is crucial so that perhaps over time, PFAS-contaminated agricultural land can eventually be brought back into production. With farmland being lost to development throughout the country and farmland access continuing to be a major challenge for many farmers, it's imperative that we investigate remediation methods now so that land is not lost to agriculture forever. Research is also needed so that farmers faced with contamination can modify their farm management practices in evidence-based ways to maintain their business viability and the safety of their products. And finally, it's important that research be conducted on the uptake of PFAS by different crops and livestock so that appropriate food safety levels can be set for agricultural products across the board. Specifically, we recommend centering this topic in several USDA programs. First, we suggest that PFAS-related research and education be included as a qualifying topic area that can be addressed by SAR grants. We want to see within the Agricultural Food Research Initiative, AFRI, a separate track or a priority for PFAS-related research. And we also request that AFRI Sustainable Agriculture Systems, AFRI Foundational and Applied Sciences, the Organic Agriculture Research and Extension Initiative, and other programs all include PFAS as part of their research focus. Thank you for your attention and for considering the importance of further research on PFAS contamination, its impacts, and possible solutions.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Okay, our next speaker is Lowell Randall. Let's see, Lowell, if you could turn on your video and unmute yourself. The floor is yours.
Okay, I tried to put my video on, and I think it's telling me that, okay, there we go. All right. So sorry, it looks like my video is not very good. I just came from the doctor, so I'm in a parking lot. Apologize, but Lowell Randall with the representing the American Society of Animal Science. And we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this listening session. Animal science is an important part of the NIFA portfolio, and would like to highlight a few key areas of research that we think deserve some additional attention moving forward. As the world's population continues to grow, natural resources are limited. Animal ag research is necessary now more than ever to improve efficiency and continue providing safe and abundant food supplies for the growing global community. It's imperative that the increased food production be done in a manner that will protect our natural resources while maintaining America's global competitiveness in producing animals and animal products. Innovations in animal science will play an important role in the future success of animal agriculture and the rural economy. Livestock and poultry sales account for roughly 40% of all farm income. And when you add in feed crops consumed by livestock, that contribution is roughly 60% of all farm income. So the importance of animal agriculture can't be understated. And we believe that the NIFA portfolio needs to reflect that in how you balance the programs. So we need to step up those investments in ag research. We need to also focus on infrastructure. Animal science is an infrastructure intensive endeavor. So we strongly support efforts to increase investments in ag research infrastructure. We strongly support APLU's efforts along these lines, and we strongly encourage NIFA to explore ways to find resources and increase the infrastructure investments. From a programmatic perspective, again, we urge NIFA to maintain an appropriate balance of animal science within the overall research portfolio. So, for example, if we were to see that significant increase to AFRI that the House has proposed, we would request that animal programs be increased by a proportional amount. Some high priorities for the animal sciences where we think that there can be some significant advances. Three themes: food security, One Health, and stewardship. So food security, as I mentioned before, we've got a projected increase of global population, and food production is going to need to increase along with that. So with land and water and natural resources being limited, new knowledge and technology is needed to offer meat and dairy producers and the allied pre- and post-harvest industries to support them. This is accelerated research in systems biology and genomics can provide sustainable increases in overall production efficiency. And these applications will provide abundant, safe, and nutritious food from animal sources to consumers globally. Second theme, One Health. One Health concept recognizes that animal, human, and ecological health are inextricably linked. And so systems research is important. Human and livestock genome projects are providing revolutionary insights for improving not only human health, but animal health and environmental health. It's clear that an abundant, affordable food supply continues to be the foundation for human health, economic stability, so a major opportunity for One Health is to enhance vital ag and biomedical capabilities that embrace functional genomics, proteomics, bioinformatics to sequence, map, and explore genomes of important species of animals, crops, and microbes. The final theme would be stewardship. Livestock operations must continue to make major advances in efficiency and sustainable use of natural resources for both extensive and intensive production systems, most effective use of land, water, energy, and other natural resources that generate inputs to animal production, as well as for animal production itself. New innovations and technologies are needed to meet future demands of foods of animal origin, stewardship of natural resources, and economic survival of food animal production. Again, appreciate the opportunity to provide our comments and look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Lowell, for taking the time to comment. All right, so our next scheduled speaker at 9:30 Eastern Time is Katie Nixon. All right, one more call for Katie Nixon. Okay. Is there another person who would like to volunteer by raising your emoji hand to go next? All right, Robert, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Robert Maddock with the American Meat Science Association. The American Meat Science Association fosters community and professional development among individuals who create and apply science to efficiently provide safe and high-quality meat. Members of the American Meat Science Association who are actively involved in research, education, and extension formed a committee to develop priorities for NIFA and USDA for the coming years. Various program areas for NIFA, and especially in the agriculture and food research initiatives, for fiscal year 2022, we noticed had very limited funding for meat science. Previously, researchers in meat science often obtained funding from the food quality programs, in addition to the animal health, production, and animal products programs. In fact, in fiscal year 2022, the RFA for Foundational and Applied Sciences, the word meat only applied 5 times, and only once is related to meat science with no mentions of post-quality meat slaughter factors. Okay. We believe that funding of meat science research is essential for NIFA because the economic reports show that the meats industry has an economics or market size of $274 billion, has grown at about 2.4% per year for the last decade. In addition, the meat industry employs about 2.5 million people and has an estimated overall impact of over $1 trillion in the United States. Moreover, the meats and livestock complex, it's the single largest economic portion of agriculture in the United States and the second largest overall manufacturing industry. Economic losses due to quality defects such as discoloration, lack of storage life, low palatability, lack of resource sales, and others are estimated to be in excess of $10 billion per year. For example, research has found that the U.S. beef industry lost over $3.74 billion annually due to discoloration and lost sales. Okay. An estimated 428.3 million pounds of nutritious beef is discarded at retail, often due to discoloration. Another important fact with funding that comes from NIFA is the training of new scientists to provide leadership and technical support and advancements in research and development, food quality and safety, and food security. This is especially important as the United States is one of the largest producers, consumers, and exporters of meat. Most of the 1862 land-grant universities, some 1890, and very few 1994 land-grants have meat scientists working in the animal or food science departments. In addition, there are many other private universities and other staff that have meat scientists on staff. Okay. We believe that fundamental, basic, and applied meat science research has provided great benefit to the food industry. Some important examples that we can provide is USDA funding and research in the early 2000s helped understand the role of mitochondria in beef color, which led to advances in packaging that has increased the shelf life of beef substantially. Previous research has shown that how aging in the Calpain system improves the tenderness of meat products. Okay. This resulted in the development of genetic markers that allowed for selection for higher quality meat. We have developed some research priorities that we believe are important going forward. These include improvement of the shelf life of meats by maintaining color, lipid, and oxidative stability, innovative processing strategies, influence of growth on animal product quality, relationships between the metabolome and muscle accretion, impact of meat quality on adapting animal production to climate change, biomarkers of stress or climate change in meat or postmortem muscle tissue, the role of the microbiome in adapting animal production to climate change and the impacts on growth efficiency and meat quality, expanding quality research to include lower value products of animal source foods in an effort to reduce food waste, flavor and other quality traits that affect consumer acceptance of animal source foods, reducing defects such as broiler breast myopathies, dark cutting beef, pale, soft, and exudative pork, and poor processing characteristics, and animal source logistics. The American Meat Science Association is asking that USDA continue to expand and support research in meat science, especially those factors that affect quality and yield of meat products.
Thank you so much, Robert, for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Eli Segor. Eli, if you'd turn your camera on and come off mute.
Yes, I was just able to turn my video on. Good morning. Well, I am very happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all about the need for increased and continued funding through NIFA of the important work that's going on in the research and extension realms throughout the land-grant university system. I am an extension specialist at the University of Minnesota, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of combining, as has begun to happen, research and extension through funding opportunities offered by NIFA. Research really only has value if it's applied. The research that occurs and is funded through NIFA is tremendously important in a whole wide variety of realms. I am encouraged to see increased availability on a small level of funding to combine that research with extension. And I am encouraging increased allocation of funding for that purpose. Specifically, I'm encouraging increased investment in both research and extension, integrated research and extension, addressing issues of climate change, natural climate solutions, and the importance of forest conservation, both for climate change mitigation and adaptation. So I want to talk about forests for just a minute, and specifically private forest landowners. So forests comprise a huge share of the land base in the United States. Of the 2.3 billion acres of US land, almost a billion, 818 million acres are forested, and about a third of that is owned and managed by private individuals and families. Forests are tremendously important to the state of our nation and our natural resources. Forests sequester, which means they pull carbon out of the atmosphere and they store it at a tremendous level. Both of these are extremely important for climate adaptation, adaptation to a changing climate, and also mitigation of climate change and the problems that it can provide. So when we look as a nation and as a world community at what we can do about a changing climate, I think we need to fund and focus on forests and the people with the power and opportunity to manage those forests as a really important solution to, again, both mitigating problems that might arise through a changing climate and helping those forests adapt and be part of that solution. So as I said, about 36% of all the land in the US is forested, and a third of that is owned by family forest owners. And these owners are ready to take action in many cases to improve and maintain the health and productivity of their land. If we want federally funded research to benefit society, we really need to continue to fund not just research, but integrated research and extension. Extension provides a critical link between research and the implementation of practices that research points us to. And as I said earlier, I'm encouraged to a small degree by the increased availability of NIFA funding for extension through programs like the Foundational and Applied Science calls recently. Those are encouraging, but they really need to be increased. So I'm here to make the case for increased funding for natural resources related research integrated with strong extension programs. I think these investments are essential to promote innovation and adoption of climate smart practices on the nation's forest, range, and agricultural lands. Natural resources span all of those land uses. Research and extension addressing forest carbon and forest management strategies and other natural resource management strategies to increase the rate of carbon sequestration and the level of storage of carbon in both standing forests and long-lived wood products is essential to our future. So I, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to advocate on behalf of the important work that our researchers and extension professionals are doing across the country to address the greatest environmental threats that we face. And I encourage continued attention and growth in investment in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eli. All right, our next speaker is Karen Gala from APLU-BAA. You could turn your video on and unmute.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Karen Gala. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. This morning, my comments represent those of the Board on Agriculture Assembly, whose purpose is to promote agriculture in all of its phases. Our members include land-grant colleges of agriculture, human sciences, forestry, veterinary sciences, across the 50 states, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the territories of the Pacific, and the US Virgin Islands. Today, the United States faces unprecedented agriculture and food challenges, increasing domestic food prices and insecurity, global competition in trade and innovation, climate pressures on crop and livestock production, wildfires and lumber shortages, as well as a rapidly growing consumer population. However, the U.S. public colleges of agriculture contain the resources to overcome these challenges. That is because the founders and those after them invested in two assets: our research, education, and extension professionals, and the public system itself, which provides communities with science-based agricultural and food solutions. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture, created in the 2008 Farm Bill, is the foundational source of funding for the land-grant university colleges of agriculture. Through the federal-state partnership with NIFA, the land-grant universities drive innovation to secure the nation's food supply by addressing global challenges in a local context. The collective U.S. public investment in agricultural research and the cooperative extension system provides a significant return to the American taxpayer. The Economic Research Service indicates that for every $1 invested publicly, the United States Food and Agriculture R&D has returned on average $20 to the American economy. However, spending in the public sector agriculture R&D has peaked in 2002. Despite this impressive return, the United States share of global agricultural R&D has decreased significantly in the last half century, going from 20% in the 1990s to 8.9% in present day value, according to a report presented to the Federal Reserve in 2020. As a result, APLU member institutions are experiencing a rapid deterioration of support for people due to flat funding of capacity funds and spaces. We will focus on these two areas for our comments. NIFA's ability to address federal challenges like climate change, food security, bio-based innovations, and preventative measures to limit the spread and impact of pests and diseases is due to the investment of its capacity programs. These programs include Hatch and Hatch multi-state funding related to research, Evans-Allen research at 1890s institutions, Smith-Lever B and C funding for cooperative extension, 1890s extension, and 1994 research and extension programs, as well as the McIntyre-Stennis Cooperative Forestry Program. These programs are fundamental for the federal-state partnership and keep the network of professionals employed at NIFA-funded agricultural experiment stations, which include on-farm as well as in the lab research, 1890s research farms and laboratories, colleges of forestry, and the cooperative extension system. Unfortunately, the public investment in purchasing power adjusted in capacity funding for agriculture and forestry research and the cooperative extension system is below 1990 levels in real dollar terms. This downturn has real results. For example, a subset of public land-grant university colleges of agriculture has seen a 32% decline in institutional hours allocated towards agricultural and natural resources research. We encourage NIFA to consider supporting capacity accounts in the budget development process so our researchers can meet the demands of the sector. Additionally, there is no source of funding like that authorized in the Research Facilities Act to invest in facilities and infrastructure where modern scientific inquiry can take place. The classrooms, laboratories, research farms, and cooperative extension offices where that science is being developed and deployed originated about a century ago. APLU is concerned that our public researchers and educators are being asked to perform 21st century science in facilities constructed in the 1950s and 60s. Together, let's create a plan for investing in the research, education, and extension sector. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you so much, Karen. All right, our next speaker is Dr. John P. McNamara. Are you on, John?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. All right, the floor is yours.
Good morning. It is a dark and snowy day in Eastern Washington, but the winter wheat is up, so we're hopeful. A few minutes ago, we heard NIFA supports about 80 or so different programs, and this speaks to the diversity and impact of research funding from NIFA. We have heard the request for specific programs from our colleagues. Let us refer back to the statement the director made on research to transform lives. That is my broad message. Let us continue to move to transformational research. As former director Sunny Ramaswamy said so well, we have a worldwide, deep, impactful role on research, application, and education. The specific issues my colleagues have addressed are all important, and I know how difficult it is to set priorities on these issues. We must now focus on implementing what we already know on natural resources, food, and health, and also focus research, application, and education on the larger scale integrated issues that face us. I've lived in this world of agriculture and biological research, extension, and education since the late 60s through a 33-career year career at Washington State University. I'm a fellow of both the American Dairy Science Association, the American Society of Animal Sciences, and I've received several recognitions for impact on research and teaching. In the last few years, I've been a member of the FAST Science Policy Committee, the Board on Agriculture and Natural Resources of the National Academies, and the Washington State Academy of Sciences. We know that NIFA has done excellently well in research, education, and teaching. We know how to grow and distribute food, and we know how to lead healthy lives. We have not been as resilient and as quick as we can to be identifying and solving the remaining problems. And to a certain extent, we have failed or done poorly at implementing our knowledge well. To my opinion, the majority of our issues and fundamental knowledge gaps are being addressed in the USDA strategic plans for 22 to 26, the White House Task Force on Hunger, and the NASM Board on Agriculture Consensus Study on enhancing coordination and collaboration across the land-grant system, which will be released tomorrow. While we need detailed research on many things, it is more important to work to what we apply, what we do now, what we do know, with supporting societal change, improving food distribution and use to reduce waste and improve health. We need to fund large-scale integrated research programs which address all the issues our colleagues are bringing up today. NIFA has already proved their ability to encourage, fund, and direct research across the wide range of needed areas. The broad priorities of the White House Task Force on Hunger, the USDA Strategic Plan, and the National Academy's Land Grant Consensus Study encompass the key areas addressed by my colleagues today. And to them I ask, if you have not read these documents, please do so, then work together to support increased funding. Funding with a B in front of the amount, not an M, regardless of the party in power or what new distractions come along. In the 40 years I've been active in research, teaching, and education, our colleagues at the federal level, USDA, NIH, or NIFA, have asked us to come and ask for more agricultural research funding, not specific programs. Specific programs are important, but they're only important in the context of integrating our climate resilient research programs, bringing people together to manage food use and healthy lives. We need to work together and support the priorities that this administration has set forth in those documents. So thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this listening session.
Thank you so much, John. All right. Our next speaker is Matthew Calvert. If you would unmute and turn your video
Okay,
on.
good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
The floor is yours. Go ahead and begin.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Matthew Calvert. I'm UW-Madison Division of Extension's Positive Youth Development Institute Director. And in my brief remarks this morning, I will speak to the value of community-based sustained investments in youth programs. And I think these investments lead to responses grounded in community specifics, community needs, and community cultures.
Matthew is having trouble with this. All right. I might have to move on to the next person and then see if he can come back in. Right. All right, so let's move on to Jason Henderson, and then we'll catch Matthew when he comes back in later. Jason, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you. My video is not working today. Yes. My name is Jason Henderson, and I am the Director of Extension at Purdue University and serve as the Chair of the Budget and Legislative Committee of the Extension Committee on Organization and Policy, also known as ECOP. I want to thank the National Institute of Food and Agriculture for this opportunity to provide input on the agency's science priorities. All universities engage in research and teaching, but it's the nation's 112 land-grant universities and colleges, including the historical Black, land-grants, and tribal colleges, that have a third critical mission, cooperative extension, a national system that turns research into practical applications and provides non-formal educational programs addressing critical public needs in every family and in every community to help them build a better life for themselves and their neighbors. With thousands of employees and more than 2 million volunteers, the cooperative extension system touches every zip code in this nation. Our success is deeply rooted in the community collaborations of our local educators and agents, and the faculty and specialists on our campuses focused on responding to critical public needs. With inflation gripping the nation, Extension has emerged as America's inflation fighter for families and farmers. This is just one example that through education, Extension helps families stretch their food dollar and helps farmers reduce input costs without sacrificing production or profitability. And for example, Purdue Extension's nutrition programs have reduced hunger by 26% for its Indiana participants. Extension's ability to respond to critical needs rests on its unique partnership with NIFA. Yet over time, and now with rising inflation, our capacity to respond to community needs has been eroded from years of stagnated appropriations, and Smith-Lever Lines 3B and C, Smith-Lever Lines 3D, 1890s extension, and 1994 extension funding lines, what we call our capacity funds. This limited capacity hinders our ability to reach people who can benefit the most from the available science, those who are underserved and those who need help adopting new technology. Our reduced capacity also hinders our ability to partner and collaborate with our communities and combine academic research knowledge with experiential knowledge embedded in our communities to make life better through education and turn discovery into practical application. Through USDA's investment in extension, NIFA is addressing critical public needs in production agriculture, climate mitigation and adaptation, economic and workforce development, 4-H positive youth development, urban food systems, and nutrition, health, and well-being. I want to highlight a few of our local impacts that NIFA has delivered through cooperative extension. Through extension, NIFA keeps farmers in business. During the last 30-year period, we've seen more than 500,000 farmers leaving their land compared to those entering. And we know that without extension, as many as 28% of additional farmers would have been lost. Through extension, NIFA and USDA builds climate resiliency in agriculture and communities. Extension works with farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners to improve profitability while making animal and cropping systems more sustainable and environmentally respectful. For example, during 2021, extension educators in Washington State helped more than 10,000 forest landowners adopt practices which improved ecosystem health and wildfire resilience on more than 37,000 acres. Through extension, NIFA offers health equity and well-being that enhances access to abundant, healthy food choices, clean water and environments, opportunities for healthy behaviors, and preventative care. And through our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, SNAP, we've collaborated with daycare schools, workplaces, grocery stores, food banks. And through extension, NIFA builds tomorrow's leaders. Finally, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the cornerstone of cooperative extension. Cooperative extension is committed to DEI and DEI principles that are embedded in all of our programs and the audiences that we serve. So we support expanded capacity funding for Smith-Lever, 1890s extension, 1994 extension, to allow NIFA through extension to reach more people with more information, including the underserved. We applaud NIFA's efforts in delivering community impact through extension, and we call for more extension-led proposals and integration of NIFA as a partner with researchers. Thank you for allowing me to present these comments, and thank you for partnering with Cooperative Extension.
Thank you so much, Jason. All right, we're going to try Matthew Calvert again. Are you on, Matthew?
Yeah, good morning again. Sorry, I went off into cyberland for a moment there. Again, I'm Matthew Calvert. I'm the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension's Positive Youth Development Institute Director. And I want to speak this morning to build on the remarks I just heard, actually, about the importance of our capacity building and our targeted NIFA investments in youth programming, in community-based programming, and in sustained community relationships. That those kinds of ongoing investments lead to our ability to ground our program in community-specific needs, in cultures, and in building ongoing relationships that lead to community development, to the civic engagement of young people, and capacity building across our communities that benefits youth and the community broadly. And if intentionally targeted, these programs can reduce inequality in our society. We have evidence in Wisconsin from our federally recognized tribal extension programs, our SIFAR programs, and our expanded access to our 4-H programming. So I'm an active member of NCERA 215, which is the North Central Extension and Research activity called the Contribution of 4-H Youth Development Programs to Social Capital. And we have learned in our work that the structure of 4-H clubs as public entities bringing youth and adults together from multiple families and their orientation toward community engagement have built social capital for youth members and then for the broader communities, particularly wherever 4-H is active and robust. Our research team has identified specific practices through which our youth programs contribute to social capital. First, 4-H programs provide the social support critical to youth, a place to belong and contribute and build relationships with other youth and with adults. This support is critical to youth safety and growth, and during the pandemic proved to be an important source of connection and emotional support. That's bonding social capital. And often, 4-H also can provide the critical bridging social capital that helps young people move ahead. Extension staff and volunteers working with young people bridge youth to community resources and build relationships that help them progress into adult careers and into adult roles as community leaders. Our Smith-Leader base funding in Wisconsin is used to support volunteer-led and staff-led programming that translates youth voice, provides representation on boards and councils, and develops youth leaders so that they have opportunities to build their own and their community social capital. Key practices in Wisconsin include young people identifying community issues, forming partnerships with adults and coalitions and elected officials, and addressing issues ranging from mental health to safe street crossings, to food access, to the creation of walking, skiing, and biking trails. And our goal is what we call spiraling up, working to build trust among youth and adults in a community and creating a virtual cycle that strengthens social capital, community trust, and community confidence in youth, and then leads to the ability to undertake community development that benefits all. So in Wisconsin, fewer than 100 extension youth development professionals leverage over 9,000 volunteers and reach well over 25,000 youth with ongoing 4-H programs. So this is an organization that builds social capital at a scale that matters. And when this work is done with intention to reach youth who lack social networks due to isolation in rural communities or low-income neighborhoods, this social capital can mitigate inequality. I have served as PI and supported 6 SIFAR projects covering over 20 years in 2 states, rural, urban, and tribal-based. And these programs have built new partnerships with schools and community organizations that have endured, and critical is that 5-year investment to provide solid funding. And our FERTEP funding was extended to one of our 11 federally recognized tribes in 2013, Bad River. We identified that community based on the strong relationship to local extension staff and a program to engage youth in food production and food sovereignty, which has led to annually upwards of 200 young people growing and harvesting wild food, traditional foods, They produced over 2,000 pounds of food annually with a market value of over $8,500 and distributed that during elderly dining programs, created a youth-led tea project that gifted teas to the community and led to the tribal chairman saying that young people are starting to be seen as food-producing dynamos. And despite being able to share some of those resources with others, we have not been able to expand those opportunities to any of the other 10 tribal communities in Wisconsin that would benefit from that connection to the land-grant university resources. So just to sum up, the key to our investment and success is a long-term commitment to staffing and program support and sufficient resources that we can provide access to all and make those critical investments in communities of need through our programs like FERTEP and SciFar that aren't sufficient to meet all of the need at this point. So thanks for the continuing support from NIFA for these programs. It's led to a lot of important transformational work in Wisconsin, and we'll continue with continued investment.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And so now we are going to transition moderators. So we have Crowley Chitness that's going to take over. So I'm going to...
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. My name is Crowley Chitness, and I will be your moderator for the next 60 minutes. At the time of registration, participants were given the opportunity to reserve a 5-minute time slot to provide feedback. We will call on participants in order of their reservation at the time of their reservation. If we are early or have available time before the next reservation, we will open the floor for other participants wishing to provide feedback during this session. There will also be additional open time at the end of this session to provide remarks. Please keep your camera off until you are speaking. When providing feedback, speakers must adhere to a 5-minute time limit to stay on schedule. You will be muted at the end of 5 minutes. You can view your remaining time by watching the countdown timer displayed on my screen. Please give your name and organization when you begin your remarks. Participants can also provide written feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time, November 30th. And our first scheduled speaker is from the American Society for Microbiology. You have the floor for 5 minutes now.
Good morning and thank you. On behalf of the American Society for Microbiology, thank you for the opportunity to inform NIFA's research, education, and extension priorities. As one of the oldest and largest life science societies with more than 30,000 members in the US and around the world, ASM's mission is to advance the microbial sciences. We advocate for public policies that support plant, animal, and ecosystem health and the role of microbiology in a well-functioning agricultural economy. ASM strongly supports NIFA's mission to invest in and advance agricultural research, education, and extension to solve societal challenges related to food and agriculture. NIFA programs advance understanding of the role that microbial science plays in advancing modern agriculture, food safety and security, and resilience to a changing climate. We hope NIFA will continue to prioritize biotechnology to support research on the agricultural microbiomes for plant, animal, and human health, and to bolster efforts to combat antimicrobial resistance. USDA has had several recent opportunities to advance these priorities. The Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law provided much needed funding for conservation programs, climate smart commodities, and the bioproduct pilot program. Looking to the future, we hope the 2023 Farm Bill will build on these opportunities for science and innovation in agriculture. NIFA-funded scientists and extension professionals who work closely with farmers and ranchers are essential in the fight against antimicrobial resistance. AMR is one of the most daunting public health challenges facing the world, and it demands a multifaceted approach to supporting animal and ecosystem health. A problem as complex as AMR requires approaches consistent with the One Health model, recognizing that the health of people, animals, and the environment are interdependent. ASM and its members are tackling AMR from a variety of angles, from healthcare and clinical laboratory settings to agriculture and environmental microbial research. Additional support is needed for new research initiatives and enhanced research capacity to support animal health, improve stewardship of antimicrobial drugs, and improve safety of foods of animal origin. This work must happen in close collaboration with producers, and NIFA programs can support the science while bridging any communications gaps between the lab and the field. In the upcoming Farm Bill, ASM will be asking Congress to provide additional support for USDA's work on characterizing and leveraging agriculturally significant microbiomes. We hope to see an investment in agricultural microbiomes equivalent in scale to the Human Microbiome Project. Thanks to past investments in the human microbiome, we can now identify associations between changes in the microbiome and conditions ranging from autism to cancer. In agriculture, farmers and researchers apply similar techniques to characterize, monitor, and manipulate the microbiome of plants, animals, and soil to advance climate resilience, human and animal nutrition, and ecosystem health. The President's recent executive order on advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing specifically notes the need to foster a biological data ecosystem that advances these goals. The uniquely interdisciplinary nature of microbiome research can serve as a model in this area. The USDA played a key role in the Microbiome Interagency Working Group and the Interagency Microbiome Strategic Plan. ASM strongly supports the continuation of this work and strengthening of interagency collaboration on microbiome research. ASM also encourages continued support for genomic sequencing and surveillance of pathogens using high-throughput technologies across USDA research programs. Advanced genomic sequencing has transformed our ability to more accurately detect and more quickly contain foodborne illness. The use of this technology can be expanded to more easily identify genetic markers associated with specific traits and provide us with tools to not only combat pathogens, but foster greater resilience and health for plants and animals. NIFA's microbial genomics program supports the agricultural bioeconomy while protecting us from pathogens and disease. Likewise, the Genome to Phenome initiative will increase our understanding of how genetic diversity in crops and animals affects their interaction with their environment. Deploying next-generation sequencing technologies more fully in agriculture will keep the U.S. at the leading edge of the bio-based economy. In closing, ASM recognizes that we cannot meet 21st century challenges in agriculture unless Congress increases its commitment to providing robust funding for microbial research through USDA. Research underpins agricultural innovation, and ASM will continue to press Congress for full funding of USDA research, education, and extension programs, including NIFA. Once again, thank you for all you do and the opportunity to provide these remarks.
Thank you, Amelia. Our next speaker will be Seth Murray. Seth, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Howdy, Seth Murray. I'm representing myself in College Station, Texas, and I'm representing myself so I can be honest and open about what I observe. The organizations that I represent and am a member of, they've indicated they'll submit written comments, and so most of my comments are in line with these. But I'm a student of history, and I teach on the history of American agriculture, and USDA and the public sector research has transformed agriculture, particularly when industry and extension is able to then translate these to farmers and producers who implement them and implement them to consumers. And in fact, research has suggested that 50% of 50% of crop improvement has been due to genetics, and 50% has been due to improved agronomics in major crops like corn and sorghum. And critically, most of that improvement came from public sector breeding, and it in fact created the modern seed industry. And that's what public sector research should still be able to do, create new industries, not only just support the status quo. So now to directly address your questions, my personal top priorities for NIFA, which align with my organizations, are public sector plant breeding, especially for developing new systems and regional adaptation of existing systems for sustainable production. The emerging area of phenomics, measuring the phenome to complement the genome, especially using drones. Data infrastructure. Notably, there's no sufficient plan or vision in place by NIFA to make the massive amount of agricultural data public and findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable or fair that's collected by public sector dollars funded by NIFA. Unlike other USDA and federal agencies. And so that's really going to hinder our future research and isn't really in line with executive orders and guidance. Broadening DEI through participation and who our research and teaching reaches and serves in extension. And overall directing more funding towards permanent capacity funds. as opposed to competitive funding, funding students and not projects, as suggested in the next decadal vision for plant science. So while I personally believe these are the most promising areas, I'll point out the critical role that scientific societies and transdisciplinary meetings play in this. Notable examples are the next decadal vision in plant science, CAST, scientific society letters to NIFA, the Ag Genome to Phenome Workshop, and other NIFA-funded workshop reports. These have buy-in from lots of different researchers who are members and should be prioritized in setting NIFA priorities. The next decadal vision is especially important because it was led by the Plant Science Research Network, which represents over a dozen scientific societies and different disciplines. So hopefully NIFA will continue to rely on those aspects. The two greatest challenges related to public capacity is related to funding and industry consolidation. Towards public capacity, investment in agriculture research is really not keeping up. I think everybody knows this and others have pointed out. So continuing to work with scientific societies and other partners in helping NIFA increase public funding for agriculture. And then probably what you don't hear enough is the increased focus on competitive funding has created a number of negative externalities. So we can't really respond to long-term issues. Hiring at universities is increasingly based on who can bring in the most money and indirect costs, which NIFA does not really compete in. So, people outside of agriculture will increasingly be hired instead of agriculture researchers. The system of reliance on competitive grants are a tremendous drain on our system resources and our land grant mission of research, education, and teaching, and nobody's really talking about it. So just an example, if funding rates on NIFA grants are 5 to 10%, that means for a researcher to have a funded project every 3 years, which is becoming an expectation, especially for early career researchers, they need to write in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 proposals per year. These proposals take anywhere between 100 and 200 hours, and that's 400 to 1,200 hours per year writing competitive funding proposals. So out of a planned 2,000-hour work week, that means a quarter to more than half of faculty members' time is spent writing grants rather than doing research, teaching, and service that they were hired for. This is a problem with the system, especially for new researchers, and alternatives are needed. And when I'm on grant review panels for NIFA and elsewhere, I estimate 70% of proposals deserve funding. Furthermore, we have no ability to pick the winners and losers in the outcome of such research. Towards industry consolidation, this is a national security concern. It further decreases private sector investment in agricultural research. It makes it hard to change the system based on new knowledge, and it decreases the diversity of our cultivars. NIFA needs to support opportunities to think about broadening the landscape of industry. NIFA is very accessible, much more accessible than other federal funding agencies, and employees are very publicly minded servants. This does not go unnoticed, and we appreciate it. Report could be improved, but we hear that's in the works. And finally, NIFA is doing a lot right. Recent collaborations with other agencies, collaborations with scientific societies. The main opportunity to improve is increase the number of rotators to broaden NIFA's perspective and to increase capacity funds and understand negative externalities that competitive grants have created. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth. Our next speaker will be Candace Fisher-McLean.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Dr. Candace Fisher-McLean. I am a housing and environmental design specialist with the University of Missouri Extension, and I am also the national coordinator for the Healthy Homes Partnership, which is a collaboration between USDA NIFA and the Housing and Urban Development. I'm here today to advocate on behalf of the Healthy Homes Partnership. NIFA has collaborated with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development on the Healthy Homes Partnership for over 20 years to support research, education, and extension programs that increase home health and safety, improve family health, and build stronger communities. People spend over 90% of their time indoors, whether it's in their home, in their car, or in their workplace. According to the National Center for Healthy Housing, each year, 270,000 children age 1 to 5 have elevated blood levels, 24 million people have asthma, 32,500 older adults die from unintentional falls, 21,000 people die from radon-related lung cancer, and 400 people die from unintentional CO poisoning not linked to fires in the home. In just the past 8 years, the University of Missouri Extension has been leading this effort. The Healthy Homes Partnership has reached over 12 million consumers through our 14 sub-grant partners at land-grant universities across the United States and our United States territories. This Healthy Homes education is provided through face-to-face programming, national guides and publications for general consumers, stakeholders, and specialized groups such as tribal audiences and those living in disaster-prone areas such as Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We also provide education through websites, social media, apps, curriculum development, and many more avenues. This funding also allows our sub-grant partners the ability to provide specialized programming in their individual states, act as often the only Healthy Homes experts in their states, and answer incoming calls and emails from the public, and partner with organizations in the community that have a similar mission in mind. I want to encourage NIFA to continue to partner with HUD in this effort to provide Healthy Homes education to stakeholders and consumers across the United States through the efforts of the Healthy Homes Partnership. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the time to speak today and to advocate on behalf of the Healthy Homes Partnership and the fantastic work we've been able to accomplish to improve the health and safety of millions of people across the country.
Thank you so much, Candace. Our next speaker will be Omanjana Goswami.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to submit public comment on NIFA's research priorities. My name is Omanjana Goswami, and I'm an interdisciplinary scientist working at the Union of Concerned Scientists. On behalf of UCS and its more than 500,000 supporters nationwide, I'm pleased to submit the following comments. UCS is a national science-based nonprofit organization working for a healthy environment and a safer world. We combine independent scientific research and citizen action to develop innovative, practical solutions to secure responsible changes in government policy, corporate practices, and consumer choices. First, we'd like to commend NIFA leadership for working to rebuild the agency's staff capacity after the losses experienced as a result of the relocation from DC to Kansas City. Second, we'd like to commend NIFA for the number of new and substantial investments it has made in public agriculture research, especially over the past 2 years, from investments in sustainable agriculture systems, rural communities, and the impacts of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic on our food and farm system. It is important for NIFA to build on this momentum, and UCS is committed to working with NIFA to do that. According to a recent USDA Economic Research Service report, public investment in the U.S. agricultural R&D has declined by 1/3 over the last 2 decades. Although private agricultural research spending is on the rise, the private sector research prioritizes commercializable applications, often leaving environmental and socially beneficial research unaddressed. One area of research that needs more investment to ensure agricultural resiliency for years to come is climate change. Publicly supported agriculture research is the first step needed to put new tools and innovations in the hands of farmers of all kinds, so they can address climate change impacts and build resiliency. Through development of regionally appropriate agricultural practices and cutting-edge technologies, research can accelerate the development and dissemination of environmentally and economically beneficial innovations and practices, such as crop cultivars with deeper root systems, high-yielding and drought-resistant crops, livestock grazing, and crop management practices that improve soil health. We also strongly urge NIFA to increase investments in transdisciplinary, systems-based research rather than research limited to specific domains. Our analysis tells us that systems-based research at the nexus of nutrition, food production, climate, and environment receives only 25 cents out of every $1,000 spent by the federal government. As these problems do not exist in a vacuum, but are deeply intertwined with each other, They're also connected to national priorities, including climate change and righting racial inequity in government funding. We encourage NIFA to build on these investments made in the SAS grants to fund research at this extension. Lastly, to promote more equity within agriculture research, NIFA should continue to include and engage directly with Black, Indigenous farmers of color, farm workers, women, and frontline communities. For example, land-grant institutions should be accountable to a revitalized public mission supporting such work, including sharing resources with community-based organizations. Additional resources should be directed to the 1890 land-grant institutions, which are the historically Black colleges and universities, the 1994 land-grant institutions, which are the tribal colleges and universities, and the Hispanic-serving agricultural colleges and universities to ensure they have the same services and support as the 1862 land-grant institutions. I thank NIFA again for giving me the time to provide these comments on behalf of my organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanjana. Our next speaker will be Didi Lemire.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, my name is Didi Lemire, and I am joining you from the headwaters of the Mississippi in northern Minnesota. I am an extension educator commenting on behalf of the University of Minnesota Extension Tourism Center, part of the Center for Community Vitality. It is our desire to communicate our continued support for funding around agritourism, especially with extension activities. Agritourism sits at the intersection of agriculture and tourism and is an exceptional way for consumers to really show their strong interest in agriculture of all different kinds. As an educator, having a ready, willing audience that wants to learn and wants to be present is invaluable. And we believe that extension is well suited to help connect the NIFA-funded research projects that are past and current, and really connect them with those consumers looking to learn about agriculture, to purchase value-added products, and to experience rural environments up close. We believe that investments are especially valuable when they can connect across different sectors and bring in valuable information from the hospitality and tourism sector around marketing and consumer intelligence, and connect those with the strong knowledge that the agriculture research has provided. We are especially in need of funding that helps to support building connections with agritourism providers, as it is an emerging sector and industry without consistent connections between those providers. And that those connections are vital for our ability to bring that research knowledge directly to those farmers and thus to our consumers. Extension in many states has been doing some kind of agritourism related work for some time. And we would like to see funding especially applied toward a clearinghouse of some sort to communicate those resources and help to provide some connections that are not currently available. Leveraging each other's knowledge and resources and working together more efficiently will serve agritourism operators for years to come. We would also like to express that the NIFA information, while it's significant in quantity, we do feel like it is clearly presented. We've been able to connect with key contacts over time and would like to continue to see more informational webinars be made available for future grant rounds. Thank you again for your time and attention today.
Thank you so much, Didi. So our next speaker will be Jennifer Philippak.
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Jen Filipiak, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, or SARE as we call it, S-A-R-E. I am a past grant recipient of SARE funding, and I've also been on the Administrative Council for SARE, which means that I help to review grants and help to set, make policy decisions and have some responsibility for reviewing our budget and basically figuring out how we're going to spend the money in the North Central region of the United States. So I have been an Administrative Council member for about 6 years now in the North Central region. I currently serve as the Vice President of the Administrative Council in the North Central region, and I'll be serving as President next year. So in my 6 years that I've been very deeply engaged with the SARE program, one thing that I think is just really important and unique about this program is how much grassroots support there is from farmers. Farmers are integral to this program at all levels. Not only are they grant recipients, it's one of the most popular funding sources for farmers to get small grants to do research on their own farms. But they're also involved as reviewers. And then they're also involved in the Administrative Council. So they actually help define our policy and set our priorities. So what I love about SARE is, right now I'm about to embark on reviewing about 40 or 50 grant proposals from farmers and researchers across the North Central region. And the diversity of proposals we get that really have roots in trying to understand how farmers can address issues of climate change, how we can grow the popularity of this really important regenerative agricultural movement. The diversity of proposals that we get is really amazing. And I learn a lot as a reviewer, and the review process is amazing too, because farmers are involved in that reviewing and we all learn from each other. And we end up picking really great projects to get funded. So it's just a really nice, efficient process. Our programs are overprescribed. We always get way more research and education proposals, for example, than we can fund. And I think a big challenge in the future for farming in the future that NIFA should be thinking about is, first is we really need to grow the regenerative agricultural movement. And the farmers that are doing these practices and researching them and thinking about them, they need to not feel alone. They need to be connected to each other. They need to be reviewers of each other's work. They need to learn from each other. And they need to just not feel alone in this, in that endeavor of regenerative agriculture. Also, regenerative agriculture really attracts a lot of beginning farmers. And that's a huge challenge we're going to face in the future. Our farmers are aging, and it's really hard for new farmers who aren't blessed with land to come into this system and be the new innovators, be the new developers of new practices. So I think those are two big challenges that SARE really does a good job of addressing. So I guess in conclusion, I would just say that, if USDA science efforts are to resonate with farmers, then programs like SARE are really important to be prioritized just because of how engaged farmers are at all levels of this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Our next speaker will be Catherine Densman.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk today. I'm Katie Densman. I am a rural sociologist at Iowa State University, somewhat recently with USDA NIFA as a social science program specialist. So hi to everyone that I know there. Good to see your names. And I just wanted to jump on and advocate for the inclusion of social sciences in NIFA's agenda and goals, and not just economics, but particularly looking to include sociology, anthropology, ethics, some of the social sciences that we don't necessarily think of quite as often. And in particular, I'm really interested in the idea of a social science smart workforce. I think that a lot of people misunderstand what the social sciences are and how they can serve us, particularly in agricultural and rural research. And so getting people educated within the social sciences who are actually social scientists is great. And I think we need more support for that. But I also think we need some support for social science education and training for people who aren't necessarily majoring in a social science. to better understand kind of where we're coming from in our perspective and what value we can bring to different research teams. Because it ends up a lot where a social scientist is added to a really great, say, USDA AFRI project, but they're added kind of last minute. Nobody really knows what they do. And so it doesn't really work out as well as it could. So along with that, I think more extension programming and support for extension programming in the social sciences would be great. We see a lot of great support for extension programming in all sorts of areas, but I really see a need for education in the social sciences. A lot of the time when I present to, say, weed scientists or pest management specialists, they'll say, this is really great. We want to learn more about how to better communicate with our stakeholders, for instance. And it would be really great to see some extension programming that would help to address that, because I'm just one person and can't necessarily help out with all the requests that I get to better understand social science approaches to dealing with these kind of agricultural issues. And then finally, I just really encourage NIFA to continue with their support for socially disadvantaged and underserved farmers. In particular, I think there should be a push for better data collection on socially disadvantaged farmers. There's a real lack of data and difficulty accessing data about minority farmers, about women farmers, about queer farmers. It's really hard to get that kind of data, and there's a great need for a lot more of that. So anything that supports better data collection, I think, would be really fantastic. And it would be also really great to exclude or to expand the definition of socially disadvantaged farmers and the people that are served by those programs targeted to socially disadvantaged farmers, because sometimes it includes minorities and women, and sometimes it doesn't include women. It never really looks at sexuality. So if we could take a look at who's actually being served by those programs and maybe make that a little bit more inclusive, I think that would be fantastic. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I can end it a little early here, if that's all right with everyone. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Our next speaker is Daryl Huddleston.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Daryl Huddleston. I'm an independent researcher with an organization called hempcollective.org. We started out as Drawdown Hemp for the research for the X Prize. We research carbon sequestration, carbon avoidance, climate change mitigation activities across all industries. We do primarily focus on industrial hemp just because of the benefits of it. But a lot of the initiatives that I've heard people speak of, we really need NIFA leadership on. I understand the US is 50 states that all operate independently. The need for data, the need for a clearinghouse, the need for a database, the need for more leadership in research is needed. I work with universities personally. The Hemp Collective team, we work with universities internationally. And just in the 2 years we've been doing our research, we have a massive database on every industry, from manufacturing to concrete to steel to automaking, you name it, we've researched it. We have the true carbon footprint of most of these industries. They don't want us to talk about it openly a lot, but we do. We try to engage with the industries themselves. Well, we don't do smear campaigns. We do active negotiation with the CEOs and CFOs and COOs of all industries to reduce their carbon footprint, to find new ways forward. And I would encourage anyone that needs a research partner, Hemp Collective, we are a valid research partner. We do all the research, good, bad, or otherwise. We don't just hide the bad stuff. We do good, bad, or otherwise. We are an honest research partner. We're willing to partner, collaborate with anyone in biofuels, manufacturing, construction, and all of these things, including food security, which NIFA, I can't commend you enough for what you already do, and we really need more for food security, especially in the US, and the small farmers, getting them back engaged in farming to take care of their communities. And I encourage NIFA just to keep the support and bring more support when you can. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much, Daryl. We can go to our next speaker, James Stack.
Yes, good morning. My name is James Stack. I'm a professor at Kansas State University and director of the Great Plains Diagnostic Network. And I'm offering comments on behalf of the National Plant Diagnostic Network. I want to start by first commending USDA NIFA for creating a series of successful programs to protect agriculture in the US. These programs have had substantial positive impacts on our nation's natural and agricultural plant systems. One such program is the National Plant Diagnostic Network. My comments today are to point out the growing challenge to meet the designated mission. It is common for us to establish programs to address critical needs, but then to under-resource them such that we can check the box that we did something, but in reality, those programs only partially realize the vision for which they were created and are often unable to meet new challenges and threats as they emerge. COVID-19 taught us the consequences of that approach. We were fully aware of the potential for the emergence of such a human health threat, yet we were woefully underprepared for it and overwhelmed by the impacts, largely as a consequence of underinvestment in the programs essential to public health. The same is true for plant health in general and for the National Plant Diagnostic Network in particular. NPDN was established in 2002 to address critical deficiencies in diagnostic capability and capacity that resulted from decades of underinvestment at both the state and federal levels. NPDN was a good idea and well implemented through the land-grant university system. NPDN is critical agricultural infrastructure and an important partner with state and federal regulatory agencies, often filling the gaps in our nation's biosecurity and regulatory systems. Diagnostics are built on experience and the application of an array of traditional to advanced technologies. That requires constant professional development for diagnosticians and routine upgrades to the technologies that underpin modern diagnostics. Substantial reductions in NPDN's funding in 2011, followed by several years of level funding, have severely hampered the ability of NPDN to keep pace with the increasing threats from recurrent and emerging pests and pathogens. Keeping a program alive allows us to check the box, but underinvestment in NPDN leaves U.S. agriculture vulnerable to increasing pest and disease threats from global trade and climate change. These threats undermine production, trade, and the economy. A budget line exists in the current Farm Bill with authorization to fully support the 70+ labs in NPDN that are housed in all 50 states and 3 U.S. territories spread across 8 time zones. To date, not $1 has been appropriated in that budget line. To its credit, NPDN continues to provide professional services in support of our nation's natural and agricultural plant systems, reaching 97% of the over 3,000 counties in the U.S. Human health and well-being are dependent upon plant health. Plant-based agriculture is an important component of our economy, critical to national and global food security, and has been identified as essential to mitigating the growing impacts from emerging biological threats. It's time to support this vital program at a level appropriate to those increasing threats and to the increasing demands of its partners and stakeholders. NIFA could better align the research portfolio with NIFA's biosecurity programs. A portion of that portfolio could more directly engage these biosecurity programs to contribute to and benefit from other NIFA priorities, for example, climate smart agriculture and the expanding capabilities in data science. This approach would create the ability to leverage each program's strengths to address the priorities of the other programs. I will be happy to follow up with any NIFA national program leaders interested in exploring such opportunities. Two, a more deliberate inclusion of plant health as a critical component in the One Health concept, co-equal with human health and animal health. Finally, it is great that NIFA supports such a program, but to under-resource that program creates a false sense of security that we are fully covered with the capabilities and capacity necessary to protect plant-based agriculture and to partner to safeguard trade. We need to strengthen the federal-state partnerships to fully support the programs that we depend upon to protect our food systems. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to future discussions.
Thank you so much, James. Is our next speaker Caitlin Youngquist here? Caitlin? Okay. In this case, if anybody wants to speak who hasn't signed up, please raise your emoji hand and I can call on you. Katie Nixon.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for accommodating me. I apologize for the time zone confusion. Too much going on in my brain. I am a farmer first in Wheatland, Missouri, and I also am a food systems director at a nonprofit here in Missouri. I chair the North Central Administrative Council currently. Jen's taking over for me after I'm done, which I will be in February. And I'm also the president of the Kansas City Food Hub. I've seen a lot happening in our food system, from the soil under my feet to the systems in which we move our food. They all need help. It was a really hard year for us as farmers. I know I can speak for myself. The weather patterns were very challenging for us. We nearly died in the heat on some days, like literally having heat stroke, and maybe needing to protect our workers who are not used to that kind of thing. In a rural area, we don't have professional ag workers. We have young kids who are willing to work, but don't understand that they also are susceptible to heat. So those are some of the challenges we faced, and I'm not the only one. There are other farmers in my region that had a really hard year this year. And part of that is just balancing wanting to provide good food to people at a good price, but also needing to make a living. We have never been able to make a living from our farm. And I know there are farmers who can. I'm not saying it's not possible, but there are so many small farmers that do not. And so we need to find ways in order to bolster the scaffolding of our food system, in order to make it easier for farmers not to have to do everything from planting the seed to marketing to, you know, being a great business person. It's a lot to ask. We saw COVID really highlighted the gap in our food system. There are a lot of small farmers and there are a handful of large farmers, and the ag in the middle has really been eroded over the years, which really causes a lot of stress and pain for farmers wanting to scale up. You either have to get really big in order to turn a profit, or you have to stay really small to try to just struggle to stay alive. So investing in those systems in the middle, the ag of the middle, is really important. I think finding ways to understand how to make these farms profitable. You know, there's this balance of like wanting to feed food insecure people with local food systems, which is fantastic, but the price point just isn't there. And part of it is because there are no subsidies. Well, there are very few subsidies helping us actually grow specialty crops, which is what we're supposed to be eating more of. And so I believe more investments into the specialty crop industry are really important. Of course, I also believe that climate smart ag initiatives are also very important. We need to understand how healthy soils, like really show that healthy soils can help produce better plants and more nutritious crops, and really invest in that outcome of that research, so that we can show people that sustainable agriculture is valuable and is a solution to climate change. We need to invest in that research, and that research needs to have farmers at the center of that research, because it's one thing for a research farm to look at different crops and grow them with students and with all the infrastructure that universities have. They can do great research and have that research, but then when it actually is applied to a working farm, it can often fall apart. So farmers need to be partners in that research, which is why I love the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program, is because farmers are always part of the research. And I think all USDA funded programs should emphasize and stress to have farmers as part of those initiatives. And the final thing I'll say is I also believe farmers need to be on these review panels. And so however, for these grants, because they understand what's being talked about when I talk about production. So however you can adjust these review panels to accommodate farmers, because they're often working on Fridays and Saturdays, especially the market growers. How can we help accommodate them being on these panels and also compensating them for their time, which I know NIFA does, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, so I guess that's my whirlwind, and I will stop there. And I appreciate support in agriculture. We need as much support as we can get. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. Our next speaker is Gerardo Gentil. Gerardo, are you here? Okay. Kim Campbell, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you very much for fitting me in. I'm a USDA ARS research geneticist. I'm a wheat breeder based at Pullman, Washington. And I'm also the incoming president-elect of the Crop Science Society. And the other thing is that I have received a few different foundation grants, and also am part of some larger sustainable ag grants, and have been on panels and chaired a panel. So I've been associated with NIFA for quite a while. I think, though, the one thing that I wanted to emphasize is that I think one of the more important programs that that we've experienced with NIFA is the pre-doctoral fellowships and also the postdoctoral fellowships. And I'd like the agency to really strongly consider strengthening those and even adding some additional funds into them, because in that way we directly emphasize capacity building in agriculture and environmental research. And I think those dollars are used quite effectively. I also would like to see additional emphasis, as some of the other speakers have mentioned, in strengthening the 1890 schools and the schools targeted towards Indigenous people and Hispanics, strengthening their capacity to compete for grants. And then also, you know, even though I am a wheat breeder, it does disturb me sometimes to see how much money still is devoted to the major crops like corn and wheat and soybeans, just simply, I think, because there's so much research infrastructure built up around those, it's a little bit easier to write effective grants. And so I'd like to see additional emphasis placed on other crops and some other crops that might really improve our diets better. The last thing is that as I've gotten older in my career and realized how intertwined everything is, you know, we go from working on very targeted molecular genetics projects to now I'm working on the soil microbiome and plant nutrition. And so I'd like us to kind of encourage additional emphasis on some of these projects where we aren't in our specific areas, where we're moving back and forth between disciplines a little bit more, because that's the reality of what farming is. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kim. Our next speaker will be Gerardo Gentil. Gerardo, are you are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. Yeah, so sorry for some connection troubles I was having. And thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about these critical issues. So I'm a PhD student and doctoral researcher at the University of Missouri School of Natural Resources, focused on water resources. So there are lots of critical things to talk about, but I would say from my perspective as an academic, and participating in these kind of discussions is actually involving different stakeholders and considering the human side of natural resources. That's something absolutely critical, not only for me, but for the lab I'm representing, which is the Sustainability Science Lab at the School of Natural Resources at the University of Missouri. So we consider a number of different things when addressing climate issues and water resources. And one of the things we think about all the time is listening different perspectives and different stakeholders when engaging in different conversations. So I would say that's one of the most critical issues for us. So we've been recently participated in a project about flood residues and stakeholder engagement. And one of the most important things we address is actually what people consider and what people think about water. So I come from a country where water resources are very critical and very important. I come from Colombia, which is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. And one of the things we talk about in some of these environmental law cases, because I'm in fact an environmental law attorney trained in Colombia, is actually what people think about water. What is the relationship between people and water, which is one of the most critical issues, apart from, obviously, the scientific side of things are important and are critical, and we have to listen to the scientists. And that's very critical to address these kind of issues. But when we think about conflict, water is a source of conflict because there's simply not enough water for everybody. So we have to manage the water cooperatively. So that's one of the key points we're working on at the Sustainability Science Lab at the School of Natural Resources in the University of Missouri. And one of the things I've been working on my research and on my work and as an environmental law advocate. So that's kind of a summary of the things we're working on and how do we see things. So basically, water management is conflict management, and that's something important to consider when addressing how do we manage natural resources and water resources more specifically. So basically, the point that I'm trying to summarize here is considering the natural, the human side of natural resources and more specifically water resources. So listening to different perspectives, different stakeholders, and considering the relationships, the existing relationships between people and water resources. That's kind of a summary of the things that I'm trying to talk about. And again, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to share our thoughts about this and participating in these kind of scenarios that we think are very important and very critical.
Thank you so much, Gerardo. Our next speaker is Aaron Snyder. Aaron. Okay. Katrina Cornish, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm a professor at The Ohio State University, but I was over 15 years at USDA ARS and then worked for industry for 6 years before heading back to academia. My whole career has been in domestic rubber production. Now, this is a critical raw material, and I really like to see it being supported more than it currently is. There is an interagency effort to bring a very broad-based program in, because we can't move anything without natural rubber. There's 50,000 different things, but pretty much all transportation is dependent on natural rubber, like airplane tires, 100% natural rubber, truck tires are 95% natural rubber. And our COVID really highlighted all of our supply chain insecurities. We even had some people fly rubber in from Southeast Asia, which is not a good thing. Now, the bringing in new crops requires a whole bunch of different challenges depending on which rubber crop you're doing. You know, Waiuli in the Southwest, semi-arid, which is great under the drought conditions, rubber dandelion in the northern states, and sunflower. There's a lot of different options. And so we need an all-encompassing program for this. And it needs to really, as Katie Nixon was saying, you know, this has to involve farmers because they're the ones who are going to have to grow this. And there has just basically been a lot of support delivered to Bridgestone for their project for Waiuli farmers in Arizona, but this needs to be non-specific, you know, not just for an individual company or an individual rubber crop. Farmers would like, I think, to have, I'm a farmer's granddaughter, by the way, would like to have choices about where they sell their crop, not be tied to an individual company that might change their minds, you know, and then they'll be left with the crop on their hands and no place to sell it. So I think too, for scalability, we need to have specialty applications, specialty crops that then transition into the commodity crops. Rubber's a commodity, but domestic rubber is highly specialized at this time, but can meet certain markets. So I'd like to really see this whole critical raw materials aspect for industrial crops addressed more specifically and more encompassingly. So it isn't just sort of tucked in different programs. And I think it is time for it to have its own program, as a lot of effort is being coordinated now interagency-wise to try and get this done, from DoD, NSF, USDA, NIFA, of course, and ARS, of course, you know. So that's basically what we're looking at. And it will include things like the crop insurance. How do you get crop insurance on a new crop? You haven't grown it before. You know, what sort of support can we do for that? What sort of support can we do for herbicides? You know, you're not going to eat these crops. So can we do something like, if this field had cotton in it, using a cotton herbicide, and that herbicide works on a rubber crop, why do we need to get it re-registered? Do you see what I mean? Because small crops, before they become big crops, have a very difficult time with specialty registrations, because the big companies only want to do the work to for large crops. You have to get there. And so programs that can really address rubber crops as they move from very small crops to enormous crops, you know, many millions of acres, to provide us not only our rubber needs, but also our fuel needs from the gas. You know, so for example, like about 3 million acres of Wayuli, just one of the crops, would give us all the rubber we need and all the fuel the military needs, you know, that sort of thing. And so I think we just need to have, I was really promoting the need to have a domestic rubber program. As I got quoted saying recently, if we can put a man on the moon, we can have domestic rubber crops. It's just we need the will to do it and the resources to make it happen, because there's no processing industry in the US. You have people happy to grow it, people happy to buy the rubber. It's the processing piece in the middle that is critical and that really needs support. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrina. Thank you so much, everybody. I will now turn it over to the next monitor, Summer LaRose.
Thank you, Praley. Good morning, everyone. My name is Summer LaRose, and I will be your moderator for the next 30 minutes. As a reminder, please keep your camera off unless you are speaking. If anyone did not previously register to speak but would like to do so, please go ahead and raise your emoji hand using the raise hand function within Zoom, and I will call on you in the order hands were raised. Each speaker will have a total of 5 minutes. When I introduce you, please take yourself off mute and we will start your time. To make sure everyone can be heard in a timely fashion, the speaker will be muted in Zoom after 5 minutes. As a reminder, participants can give feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time on November 30th. Please, in the email, include your name, organization, contact information, and your input in plain text in the body of the email. I am not seeing any new hands. So with that, we will conclude this NIFA Listens session. We want to thank you again for your participation. Again, we'll remind you that you can still provide feedback by emailing nifalistens@usda.gov through 5 p.m. Eastern Time on November 30th. We will now close with remarks from Acting Director of NIFA, Dr. Dion Toombs.
Valuable feedback. Hello again. I want to thank each of you for your valuable feedback. I hope you found this opportunity as valuable as did we here at NIFA. Like I said at the beginning of our time together, your participation in today's session is a testament to our shared commitment toward advancing agricultural research, education, and extension. I want to ensure that the feedback you have provided today will not go unused, but will be a vital component as we develop NIFA's roadmap forward. Along those lines, I am pleased to share with you that our new NIFA strategic plan for 2022 to 2026 will be available on our website in a couple of weeks. This plan will serve as our roadmap to shape our decision-making and effectively and efficiently accomplish our critical priorities. In developing this strategic plan, we considered feedback from a wide range of external stakeholders, land-grant universities, other partners, and our dedicated employees through listening sessions like this one, focus groups, and surveys. This plan reflects the tremendous sharing of information, ideas, and thoughts. We regularly revisit and update the plan based on progress and input to meet evolving demands, new and important challenges. This plan is a living document. Input like what you have shared in our session today, and any additional feedback you provide after reviewing the plan will be considered as we make necessary adjustments to our goals. We look forward to continued partnership to further strengthen research, education, and extension to best serve agriculture, communities, and society. Once again, I thank you all for joining us today and for sharing your insights.
Thank you everyone for your time today. Just a reminder that NIFA Listens will continue with an afternoon session. Please join us if you're available. Have a great day.